Welcome back to the God Among Us podcast series. This is Mike, and I'm joined in the studio by Dave. It was an interesting discussion last time.
Yeah, it was with Jan. It was very good.
Covered a lot of topics. There was one topic that we touched on that we didn't include, or the last podcast. It touched on the commonality among religions. Basically, Jan evangelizes her Catholic faith, but she agrees that there's more than one
way to God.
More than one way to God, yeah. And, we'll play a cut here from our interview with Jan Walchuk. And then maybe we can provide a little analysis of it. Going to be a short one today, but we think we have an impactful message here.
I think I've scared you off from the Muslim school part.
We didn't mention that Jan taught at a Muslim school.
Well, and I think, would you say that was part of, did that add anything to it, and should we talk about it?
The thing I think it would have added for me is more of an understanding of other religions. I was asked once when I was young, what's so great about the Catholic faith? And I just remember saying, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's the way I was raised, right, and it works for me.
Yes.
But I think of people like in other generations, I think there was maybe some arrogance about being Catholic.
It was.
But I wasn't.
Like you're better than.
Yeah.
You're a little bit
like you're only going to go to heaven
if
you're Catholic.
Exactly.
I can remember some older relatives saying that.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And that really bothered me. So, like my hairdresser, who I say do Bible studies with, she doesn't believe all the same things I believe, like, for example, the Blessed Mother. But I can still talk to her about it. And she talks to me. We're very accepting of the differences, and then we try to hone in on the things that are the same. Yeah. And I think in teaching with Muslim teachers and teaching Muslim kids, it gave me an appreciation for their faith and some admiration for when they celebrate Ramadan, the things that they do. And also in talking to one of the Muslim teachers that I was somewhat close to, we talked often about the similarity of, the things that we have in our faith, which, in fact, there was a Jewish teacher there too, and three of us were going to get together.
That would be fascinating.
And we just never got around to it.
When you do talk, there are a lot of similarities between the three religions. Mm-hmm. They're really...
Ultimately... It's the Heavenly Father, the creator of everything, right? Ultimately.
Right. And I've the service I'm a non-denominational minister, okay? So the service at American House is that we've got Catholics, Methodists, Baptists, we've got a little bit of everything. Nobody cares about the dogma. And I think, to your point, they're all older, and at some point, those are details. Okay,
right.
It's God. It's your relationship with God, and that's really what it comes down to. And we've have just screwed it up with. We're human,
right.
We're human, and we got to have rules to belong to the club. I understand them, but I think it separates us in a lot of ways too. That doesn't have to happen.
No. But then you have an ambassador like Jan for her faith. It's wonderful, because Jan isn't saying, I'm better than you, or this faith is better than yours. She was raised Catholic. It's what works for her.
And she's living her faith.
And she's living her faith, yeah. And I think that's
what's important.
That's what's important. It is. It's a wonderful story, Jan. It really is.
I appreciate, being able to tell my story, and it was good for me, too, to think about how I got to this point, and that makes me even more grateful for all of the things that God has sent me, all the blessings. And sometimes you tend to focus on the hard things and forget how you're blessed.
I think that we're wired that way to think about.
So I think that was beautifully articulated by Jan. I think she's open to the concept that there's more than one path to God.
Yeah, it's, again, as we talked about in there, I think we like to believe our path is the right path and the only path, but everybody thinks their path is the right path and the only path. So we all can't be right or all can't be wrong in this, and I think she brought it up. We have to be more open to each other in this. In the end, it's the same God that we're all talking about.
I agree. I printed off, Dave, this Pew Research from 2015 shows a breakdown of world religions.
Mm-hmm.
And Christianity is 31%. So not quite 1 in every 3 people on the globe identifies as Christian. So this is back in 2015. These numbers might
So who knows what anybody believes
right.
now, eh?
That's 8 years ago. The second religion was the Muslim faith. They're at 24%, so roughly 1 in 4 people.
You're really good at fractions.
Huh?
You're really good at fractions.
And the third, believe it or not, no, I'm sure people can believe this, would be unaffiliated, 16%. Fourth on this pie chart are Hindus at 15%. It's a pretty high number, but I guess think about it, that part of the world, Asian, they're high population countries.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at that, is Christianity the only true path to God?
It would be hard to convince the 20% Muslims and the 15% Hindus. And when Jan was talking, she talked about the similarities with the Muslims. And so I think what the difference is, how they get to God.
Aiming for the same
God. It's just how the route we take to get there.
Once you talk to people from other faiths, you start to recognize you have more in common than you thought.
Yep, I agree.
As a postscript to my conversation with Dave, and referring back to our conversation with Jan and talking about the pitfalls of arrogance in some religions, I'd like to read a passage from my favorite sage in Ben Franklin's autobiography. I found this very relevant to our discussion. In this passage from his autobiography, he's talking about a particular religious sect that he found refreshing in how they viewed themselves. And in this sect, one of the founders complained that they were grievously calumniated by the zealots of other persuasions and charged with abominable principles and practices to which they were utter strangers. So Franklin suggested that maybe to put a stop to this, he should publish their articles of belief and the rules of their discipline. And the founder said, well, that had been proposed among them, but not agreed to for this reason. When we were first drawn together as a society, says he, it had pleased God to enlighten our minds so far as to see that some doctrines which we once esteemed truths were errors, and that others which we esteemed errors were real truths. From time to time, he has been pleased, he being God, to afford us farther light. And our principles have been improving, and our errors diminishing. Now, we are not sure that we are arrived at the end of this progression and at the perfection of spiritual or theological knowledge, and we fear that if we should once print our confession of faith, we should feel ourselves as if bound and confined by it, and perhaps be unwilling to receive further improvement, and our successors still more so, as conceiving what we, their elders, and the founders had done to be something sacred, never to be departed from. So I'll continue on now with Franklin's thoughts. This modesty in a sect is perhaps a singular instance in the history of mankind, every other sect supposing itself in possession of all truth, and that those who differ are so far in the wrong. Like a man traveling in foggy weather, those at some distance before him on the road he sees wrapped up in the fog, as well as those behind him, and also the people in the fields on each side. But near him all appears clear, though in truth he is as much in the fog as any of them. Ambient music called Heavenly Father by Kitaro, as found on the Internet Archive.